A lot of mock drafts have Detroit now drafting Desmond Ridder. I've seen as many as 5 mock drafts that have him be the quarterback to go in the first round to the Detroit Lions. I am not a fan of it. Tell me what you think over there, DB.
You know, they're doing everything in their power to investigate all of these guys and get comfortable with these guys. And, you know, I will say...
let's bring him in. The great Dave Birkett, Lions beat writer, Detroit Free Press, one of the best in the business, kind enough to give us a couple of minutes here. Dave, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing great, buddy. Let me ask you quickly, because Braylon's been bringing this up about Baker Mayfield.
Hey, man, I'm telling you.
Do you think, and you know, this Vegas, my bookie, who's a sponsor on our show, on our network, sent the top 3 teams that Baker Mayfield will land. It's the Seahawks #1, the Carolina Panthers #2, and the Lions at plus 350 #3. Do you think that's crazy talk, or is that even a remote possibility that Baker Mayfield to the Lions is still an open door?
Well, I wouldn't rule anything out, I guess, with the Lions in the quarterback position, but I don't think it's any sort of priority for them. I don't think it's going to happen, you know, right now. I mean, could it happen down the road? Sure, I guess. But look, you know, the natural tie obviously is John Dorsey. He was the Browns GM when the Browns took Baker Mayfield #1. You know, we had a little beat writer session with Dan Campbell today and asked him a lot about the quarterback position. And I think the Lions are pretty comfortable with Jared Goff as their quarterback. Wouldn't rule out the Malik Willis stuff still, but you know, they're pretty comfortable with Jared Goff at quarterback, probably more than, you know, you and me and some of the other, you know, pundits out here who think that they should make a move for Baker or Malik Willis or some of these other guys.
Yeah, I just, you know, for the most part, I know it's a sketchy thing to come up with, but I just think there's something there. It got really quiet after the conversation was had with John Dorsey and Baker Mayfield, and I think the draft time is where you start to see a lot of those funny things happening. You know, speaking of quarterbacks, Detroit, a lot of mock drafts have Detroit now drafting Desmond Ridder. I've seen as many as 5 mock drafts that have him be the quarterback to go in the first round to the Detroit Lions. What do you think about that? I am not a fan of it. Tell me what you think over there, DB.
Yeah, late round 1. I guess you're talking about. I've definitely seen that. The other thing I forgot to mention with the Baker thing is, you know, the contract, right? I don't know that the Lions would want to take on that kind of money. But look, the Ridder thing, you know, it's sort of the same thing. I think where the Lions are right now is, again, they're comfortable with Jared Goff at quarterback. You know, if you gave him some truth serum, they'd probably admit that he's not their long-term answer, right? That they're always going to have their eye looking for the next great thing. But, you know, Dan Campbell did say today, and we'll have a story up on Freak.com here shortly, you know, just that he doesn't think you need an elite quarterback to win, right, in the NFL. Like, you don't have to have that Patrick Mahomes type, that you can have sustainable success without that. And so, you know, maybe a guy like Ridder does fit into that, who does a lot of things well and would come cheap. But my sense on the Lions still is that they want to build out this roster. They want to do what they can to put the entire supporting cast in place. And then when the time is right, you know, they find their quarterback, whoever that is, whether it's, you know, a high pick in the draft, whether it's somebody they trade for, or maybe it's somebody like Goff who just, you know, continues to develop and become the elite guy that teams thought they were getting when he was the #1 pick.
Talking to Dave Birkett on Twitter, at Dave Birkett, Lions beat writer, Detroit Free Press. Dave, going back to something that you wrote a couple of days ago, maybe it was the end of last week, actually, with Todd McShay, where McShay says this is a really crappy year to have the #2 pick because you're just not going to get the haul for that pick. The chances that the Lions make that pick at 2 is what, north of 90%, do you say?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you know, probably north of 95. I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody does fall in love with Malik Willis and want to come up. And, right, I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out exactly what the Saints are thinking. Is that, you know, did they make that deal for 2-1 so they can go up, or do they really like their team enough that they think 2 rookies can help them? You know, maybe there's enough noise about Malik Willis that someone will want to come up high enough that the Lions have an opportunity to trade down. But I don't, you know, my sense is that, you know, that he just is not quite generating enough buzz, enough people believe in him to be that type of prospect that someone will want to come up at #2. And I don't know that there's, you know, that any of those other prospects does that as well. And, you know, if Hutchinson is there, I still think the Lions take him. And so I think there's a really good chance that the Lions are drafting at #2 this year.
Dave Birkett joins us, Free Press Lions beat writer, our good buddy here. The hot name again is Kayvon Thibodeau, right? What's your take on him? The Lions. I saw your quotes on Twitter. Tell us more about Kayvon Thibodeau at 2.
I mean, look, there's going to be a lot of noise about Thibodeau, and it's certainly increased here in recent weeks. And I think the Lions are doing the right thing by, sending all these guys to pro day and doing as much homework as they can on him because, he is one of the top prospects in this draft. And to me, it seems like the Lions are, they're trying to get comfortable with the idea of taking him. They're making sure that every box is checked, that he is going to fit in the locker room, that he is going to be receptive to coaching, that, all these knocks on him that are out there. And it's not just media people that are saying this. I mean, these are the legit concerns that ultimately, they have these questions answered to feel comfortable both in taking him and in passing on him in case, he becomes what, a lot of people think he can become. And that's a really good pass rusher in the NFL. So, I still sort of have my doubts on that a little bit. I mean, I think, if you have to do this much work on a prospect, you're trying to convince yourself of something that's there. I go back to the Bob Quinn line on Tease Tabor that, he studied him as much as any prospect ever, and he came away thinking he was the right guy. Well, maybe if you need that much study, that should tell you something right there. But there's no doubt that Kayvon Thibodeau is a really good player. And, if he is true to his word, he did say at the Combine, football is number one for him. And that's ultimately what the Lions are trying to discern. If football is number one, if he really loves ball, they can live with some of the personality stuff. That's what Dan Campbell said today. And so I think ultimately that's what they're trying to do.
Well, Bob Quinn was a bad student, as we know, so we're gonna pass on that one. But you got some other names that supposedly the Lions are going to be visiting with: Hutchinson, Hill, Sauce Gardner, the Detroiter. Yep. Tell me a bit about those guys, Dave.
Yeah, look, next week is their local day. Braylon probably did this when he was coming out, right? Where it's the everyone who's sort of in the Metro Detroit area, and that's expanded now to include University of Michigan players. They come in for a day, and they're not working out or anything. The top guys aren't, at least. They just come in and coaches spend some time with them. Yeah, and so that's essentially what's going on next week, Monday, I believe it is, and Hutchinson, who obviously is in line to be potentially the number one pick in the draft or number 2. He will be there. Sauce Gardner's the top cornerback in the draft. He's from Detroit. He's going to be there. Dax Hill obviously is the guy who could be in the mix at 32 if he makes it there for the Lions. So, again, Lions are, they're doing everything in their power to investigate all of these guys and get comfortable with these guys. And, I will say, Brad Holmes went to Michigan Pro Day. The Lions have talked to Hutchinson already. So I think if he's there at number 2, I don't think there's much of a choice that they have to make. I still think he's the guy if he's there for the Lions at number 2.
Hey, Dave Birkett, I want to go back to that, something you just said, and ask you, do you think now with teams doing all of this extra film study, all this extra interviewing, all this extra going back and watching the tape over and over again, do you think part of that is because this is one of those first-round drafts where everybody has some questions? There's no guaranteed picks. There's no guaranteed prospects that you pick, and it's like, this is the guy. Do you think it's because of that? And also, or do you just think because now everybody has a mock draft, everybody has the internet, everybody has something to say, everybody has Twitter, so sometimes if you're a GM, not necessarily a good one, you can get talked out of having a pick by just reading something other people say. How much of it is intangibles of that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't think, Brad Holmes, or like you said, most GMs, they're aware of it, right? But I think they're able to block out some of that noise and just sort of take it for what it is. I mean, look, the fact with some of those mocks is that, there is a kernel of truth to that, right? I mean, that's coming from, guys in my position, people in my position who are talking to some of these decision makers and have, somewhat informed opinions, but not nearly on the level of any of these NFL guys.
And that was no disrespect to you, by the way, Dave. Just wanted to let you know that.
No, it's 100%. Like I've always said, right? I watch film. I watch the film of every game, but I don't know 1/100th of the guys that are really watching the film know, So that's why I like to lean on them for input when it comes to some of these things. But ultimately, I think what it comes down to is that the first thing that you said is that this is a draft where, the top, let's say, 8 or so players are one and the same in a lot of ways. And, Aiden Hutchinson may be number 1, but I don't know that anyone thinks of Aiden Hutchinson as, being a 15-sack guy in the NFL, and Kayvon Thibodeau may be number 2, but it's the same thing. And so if there's not a big difference between the guy that you're going to take or could take at number 2, who's number 2 on your board, well, and you have some questions about him in not off the field areas necessarily, but how his personality fits with the culture you're trying to build, it's okay to go down to number 3, that there's not a big enough difference between those guys to warrant you taking the risk that comes with that guy that has those questions. So that's what the Lions and all these teams at the top of the draft right now are trying to figure out.
I still say grab Malik.
Yeah, I think.
Hey, Maz, look, I'm starting to come around on that a little bit. I don't know that the Lions will. I wouldn't mock him to the Lions if I was doing a mock today. I'm still not off my Jermaine Johnson thing, by the way. But look, I think there's a lot of. Malik Willis has special traits, and I'm a believer that if you have that special quarterback, and if you believe you can develop them, maybe you take him. And so I'm starting to come around a little bit on Malik, even though I still wouldn't mock him.
I don't want to compare Malik Willis to Matthew Stafford, but remember when the Lions had Dante Culpepper and everybody was, you got to take Aaron Curry here. You got to take Aaron Curry here.
Oh yeah.
There is no player in this draft, in my opinion, that can change your franchise the way Malik Willis has the potential to do.
And the key. Who loves him?
Sometimes you got to take that gamble.
The Steelers love him, Dave. We want what the Steelers want.
Listen, Ryan, I think you're right that there's no player that can change your franchise like that if he reaches his potential.
Correct.
The question again is, if how likely is he to reach that potential? And the flip side, and it's easy for me to say this, and I have the last couple of years talking about quarterbacks. My job doesn't depend on drafting that quarterback and him developing in 3 years, where Brad Holmes' job does. And so if he doesn't become that guy, then you set back this rebuild. And so I think that's what you have to wrestle with at the top of the draft. But I'll tell you guys this too from our beat writer session today, and this will be in the story too. I asked Dan, just point blank, like, what are you looking for in your number 2 pick? What do you need out of your number 2 pick? And one of the first things he said was, a day 1 starter. And so that doesn't, that's not a quarterback right for the Lions. Malik Willis or any quarterback is not going to start week 1.
Amen to that. Dave, we can't thank you enough for the time, man. Hey,
thanks,
follow Dave on Twitter at Dave Birkett. Read him on Freep.com. Spend $1 too. You get the Freep for $1 for 6 months. So go there right now, Freep.com, and subscribe. Be a subscriber. So much great content.
I wish I still had it delivered to my front door.
You and me both. You can get it at the gas station, though. You can get it at the gas station. Pick up a paper near you. Subscribe to the Freep. Read Dave on Freep.com. We got to get Dave
some Woodward sports gear.
Amen to that.
What size you want, Dave?
I'll wear it. Hey, next time I'll be, where's Waldo, whatever my location is, I'll be wearing it.
Amen to that.
See, this is another one. See, this is even better because now I'm trying to guess where you are.
Let Dave go. He's given us enough of his time.
He's got to get his kicks.
Thanks, Dave. We appreciate you, my man.
See you, man.
All right, guys, we're going to take a break. Come right back. React to. Look, I'm telling you guys.
I want to respond to something.
I know we got a couple of things to go in there, and that Willis pick is intriguing.
He's picking up the steam. You can tell he wants to mock him. He wants to mock him. He does.
I don't like what he said about Dan Campbell. I want you to talk about that. Dan
that's what I want to pick up on.
That's exciting.